The mysterious encounter. The forest was quiet. The only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. James walked slowly through the dense trees, his boots crunching on the dry ground. The air was heavy, thick with mist. He had been walking, for hours, following a narrow path that seemed to disappear into the thick of the forest. His mind wandered as he moved, lost in thought. It had been a long time since he had taken a walk like this. Away from the busy life in the city, the forest felt peaceful, but there was something strange about it, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. As he rounded a corner in the path, James stopped suddenly. Something wasn't right. He heard a faint sound, like a soft growl. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the sound of any animal he knew. He moved closer, peering through the trees, trying to see what was causing the noise. There, lying in a clearing, was a massive creature. It was a beast unlike anything James had ever seen. Its fur was dark and thick with patches of dirt and blood stained on its body. It looked injured, its eyes dull and weak. James hesitated, unsure whether to approach. The creature was large, too large, and it could be dangerous. But the growl wasn't threatening. It sounded more like a cry for help. His curiosity got the better of him. He stepped forward cautiously, his steps light and slow. The creature's breathing was shallow, but it didn't seem to notice him yet. James knelt beside it, his eyes studying the beast closely. Its wounds were deep, but it was clear that this wasn't just any animal. There was an intelligence in its eyes, something that made James feel uneasy. This was no ordinary creature. Without thinking, James reached out gently, his hand brushing against the beast's fur. The creature flinched but then relaxed, its breathing evening out slightly. It looked at him, and for a moment, James thought he saw something like recognition in its eyes. The creature wasn't wild. It was hurt and in need of help. James's instincts kicked in. He couldn't just leave it there to die. He quickly searched through his backpack for anything useful. A first aid kit. He wasn't a doctor, but he knew enough to treat wounds. He began to work, carefully cleaning the beast's wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. The creature let out a low, rumbling sound, but it didn't try to pull away. It seemed to trust him despite everything. As James worked, he couldn't help but feel that this moment was strange. He had never been in a situation like this before. Who would leave a creature like this out in the wilderness? And why had he come here today of all days? The forest seemed too quiet, too still. He shook off the uneasy feeling and focused on helping the creature. After what felt like hours, the creature's wounds were cleaned and bandaged. It wasn't much, but James hoped it would be enough. He backed away slowly, trying not to startle the beast. It seemed calmer now, its breathing deeper, though still labored. James couldn't leave it there, not like this. But he had no idea where to take it. The nearest town was miles away, and he wasn't sure if the creature would even survive the journey. He sat down on a nearby rock, thinking. The silence around him was broken only by the soft rustling of the trees. He needed to get help. He couldn't do this alone. He stood up, brushing the dirt off his pants, and turned to walk back the way he came. Just then, the creature stirred. It let out a soft growl, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. James froze, feeling a chill run down his spine. The growl wasn't threatening this time. It was different, almost pleading. He turned back to the beast, unsure of what to do. But before he could react, a sound reached his ears. Footsteps, heavy and fast, coming from the direction he had just walked. James's heart raced. Who else was out here in the forest? Was someone else looking for the creature? He glanced back, at the beast, then toward the sound. Whoever was coming, they were getting closer. And they were not alone. More footsteps joined the first, the sound growing louder, closer. James's mind raced. He needed to hide. But where? The creature wasn't in any condition to move. And if those people found him, he wasn't sure what would happen. He backed up, moving silently through the trees, his eyes fixed on the clearing. The footsteps were almost upon him now. He had to make a decision. The Baroness's search. The air in the forest had shifted, and a strange, uneasy feeling filled the space where James stood. The footsteps he had heard earlier were growing louder, each step now echoing through the trees like a warning. He glanced toward the clearing where the beast lay, its dark eyes flickering in the dim light. The creature's breathing was steady but weak, and James knew they didn't have much time. He had to make a decision. The footsteps were unmistakable, moving with purpose. Whoever was coming wasn't just passing by. They were searching. But what could they possibly want with an injured creature like this? James's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched lower, hiding behind a thick tree. He knew he couldn't run. The beast's condition would only worsen without his help, but there was no telling who or what was coming for it. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the clearing. It was a woman, tall and imposing, her presence dominating the space around her. She wore dark flowing robes embroidered with symbols James couldn't recognize. Her face was hidden beneath a hood, but even from where he crouched, James could sense the power radiating from her. "Find it," the woman commanded in a cold, emotionless tone, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "The creature is not far. It will not escape." She wasn't alone. Behind her, a group of armored guards marched in perfect formation, their boots crunching on the forest floor. They spread out, their eyes scanning every inch of the clearing. James's breath hitched in his throat as he realized they were looking for the beast. The woman, this Baroness, had come for it. James barely dared to move, his heart hammering in his chest. He couldn't make a sound. If they found him, they would certainly find the creature as well. And whatever these people wanted, he was sure, it wouldn't be good for the beast. The Baroness raised her hand, signaling for her guards to stop. She looked around, her sharp eyes searching the area as if she could sense the presence of something hidden, something that didn't belong. James felt a chill crawl down his spine. Her gaze seemed to pierce through the darkness, a hunter searching for her prey. "It's close," she muttered to herself, almost as if speaking to the air. Then, louder, she commanded, "Bring it to me. It's the last one. The last one of its kind." James didn't understand. What did she mean by the last one? What was this beast, and why did this Baroness care so much about it? His thoughts were interrupted when he heard the sound of rustling from the clearing. The beast, perhaps sensing danger, tried to move. James could feel the creature's pain, the slow and shaky attempts to get up. It was too weak to run. But it was trying. James's chest tightened. He had to help it, and fast. He knew the Baroness couldn't find the creature, not now, not when it was so vulnerable. He had no idea who she was, but everything about her screamed power. Danger. She wouldn't hesitate to destroy the beast if it meant gaining control over whatever secret it held. Before James could make his move, the Baroness spoke again. This time her voice almost a whisper. "It's here, I know it is, I feel its presence." The air around them seemed to shimmer, and James's instincts screamed at him to run. But he couldn't leave the creature behind. Not now. The guards moved closer, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. James had to act, and fast. Without thinking, he rushed forward, crouching low to the ground as he darted towards the creature. His heart was in his throat, his pulse racing. The Baroness's forces were closing in, and the beast was too weak to move. James reached it just as the first of the guards stepped into the clearing. With his hand on the creature's side, he whispered, "Hold on just a little longer." But it was too late. The Baroness's voice rang out with cold precision. "Found you." James froze, his blood running cold. The guards moved in around him, and in an instant he was surrounded. The Baroness stepped forward, her eyes locking onto him. Her gaze was full of cold curiosity, as though she were trying to figure out who this human was, who dared to interfere with her plans. "You've made a mistake," the Baroness said, her tone flat but with an edge of amusement. "This creature belongs to me, and you, human, will pay the price for getting in my way." James stood tall, his mind racing. He couldn't back down now, not when the beast needed him most. But what could he do? The Baroness's guards were too many, and they were armed with weapons far more advanced than anything he could fight with. The Baroness's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You have two choices, human. Give me the beast or face the consequences." The tension in the air was thick. James's mind raced. What was this creature to the Baroness? Why did she need it so badly? And more importantly, what was he supposed to do now? Just as James opened his mouth to speak, a soft, almost imperceptible growl came from the creature. The beast, weakened though it was, seemed to recognize the danger. Its eyes glowed faintly, and for the briefest moment, James thought he saw something shift, something powerful. The beast wasn't just an animal, it was something far more ancient, far more dangerous. The Baroness noticed it too. She took a step back, her eyes narrowing. "This is no ordinary creature, is it?" she said softly, her voice filled with both awe and caution. "So, it is true." The air crackled with tension, and James knew that whatever came next would change everything. The question was, would he be ready to face the consequences of his choice? The bond that forms, the tension in the clearing hung like a thick fog, suffocating every breath. James's pulse raced as he stood frozen, the Baroness's piercing eyes locked onto him. She had known something about the beast, something that he hadn't yet figured out. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the gravity of the situation. She spoke again, her voice cool and controlled, as if discussing a mere trinket she wanted back. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, human," the Baroness said, her gaze flickering between James and the beast. "This creature is the key to a power greater than anything you can comprehend." James swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his ears. He didn't know what to make of her words. Power. What did she mean? And why was the creature so important to her? He could see the beast, lying still on the ground, its body broken, its eyes filled with something James couldn't fully read. Fear? Trust? Perhaps both. Before James could speak, one of the guards stepped forward, raising his weapon. The Baroness stopped him with a simple hand gesture. Her eyes softened as they returned to the beast. "Leave him. He's just a pawn in this game." "Pawn?" James repeated, stepping forward, his voice growing stronger. "This creature is no pawn, it's more than that, and I'm not letting you take it." The Baroness raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by James's defiance. "You are in no position to make demands. You should have stayed out of this, human. But now you're caught in the middle of something far beyond your understanding." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The guard stood at attention, the beast's heavy breathing the only sound in the clearing. James could feel a strange pull in his chest, a connection to the creature that went deeper than mere sympathy. It wasn't just injured. It was connected to him somehow. He didn't know how or why, but in this moment, he could feel that they shared something. Perhaps it was the pain in its eyes, or the way its energy seemed to resonate with his own, but James couldn't shake the feeling that this was no accident. Fate had led him here. The beast stirred again, its eyes flickering with a renewed spark of life. James felt a sense of urgency. He couldn't let the Baroness win. The creature's glow intensified as though sensing the danger closing in on it. It was faint, but it was there. An energy that seemed to hum beneath its fur. Something ancient and powerful. The Baroness stepped forward, her hand outstretched toward the creature. "It's time to end this game, human," she said softly. "Step aside. I will not ask again." James's eyes widened as the beast suddenly let out a low growl. A warning. The air around them shifted as if the very earth had begun to respond to the creature's presence. James felt it too, the power that surged beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. It wasn't just a beast, it was a force of nature, a being of untold strength. And in that moment, James realized the truth. The Baroness wasn't just after a pet. She was after something far greater. This creature, this beast, was not just a guardian. It was the key to something ancient, something that could shift the balance of the universe itself. The Baroness must have sensed James's shift in understanding, for she smiled, a knowing, calculating smile. "You see now, don't you? This creature, It is the last of its kind, the last guardian of an ancient power. It holds the secrets of a forgotten civilization, a civilization that once ruled the stars. James's stomach twisted as the pieces fell into place. So, this creature, it's not just a pet, it's something much more important? Exactly, the Baroness said, her voice laced with both admiration and coldness. And you, human, have no idea what kind of power you're standing in the middle of. The air crackled again, and for a brief moment, James felt a shift in the energy around them. The creature's eyes blazed with a fierce light as though it were speaking directly to him, its power flowing through him. James felt his own body resonate with it, a strange surge of energy flowing through his veins. He staggered back, overwhelmed as the world around him seemed to warp and shift. He heard a voice. No, it wasn't a voice. It was a feeling, a thought that wasn't his own. You are bound to me now. The words echoed in his mind, sending a chill down his spine. The connection had been made. Whatever this beast was, whatever it represented, James was now tied to it. The beast wasn't just protecting him. It had chosen him. But why? You've made a powerful enemy today, human, the Baroness said, her voice suddenly sharp, her eyes narrowing. This creature's power is mine to claim, and you've just made a terrible mistake by standing in my way. James felt the weight of her words, but in the back of his mind, the beast's presence gave him strength. Together, we can fight. It seemed to say, its thoughts merging with his own. But only if you trust me. You're right, James said, more to himself than to anyone else. His voice was steady now, firm. I won't let you have it. Not after everything I've seen. The Baroness's smile disappeared, replaced by a look of cold fury. Then you will regret this, human, she said, her hand moving toward the guards. Take him. Before James could react, the guards lunged, but the beast's glow flared brightly. It was as though the entire forest responded to its power. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to push back against the Baroness's forces. James could feel the surge of power within him, and he knew this was just the beginning. The beast, now fully alert, rose to its feet, its form towering over them. Its energy seemed to fill the clearing, pushing back the Baroness's forces. James's heart raced as he realized that he and the beast were no longer just two separate beings. They were one, and together they could face anything. The Baroness stepped back, her eyes wide with shock and rage. This is not over, human, she spat. You will regret this, but by then it will be too late. The air crackled once more, and in that moment, James knew that everything had changed. There was no going back now. The battle had only just begun, and the bond between him and the beast was far stronger than anything he had ever imagined. A dangerous revelation. The atmosphere in the clearing was thick with tension. The energy from the beast, glowing faintly like a dying star, swirled around them, both awe-inspiring and terrifying. James stood beside it, his heart hammering in his chest, feeling the raw power coursing through the air. His body still hummed with the creature's energy, and the connection between them was undeniable. But despite the surge of adrenaline and newfound strength, one thought haunted him. How long could they hold out against the Baroness? The guards stood frozen, staring at the beast in shock, unsure of what to do next. Their weapons still raised, but none dared to move closer. The beast's aura was enough to keep them at bay. Even the Baroness, for all her cold confidence, seemed taken aback. She had underestimated the creature, and worse, she had underestimated James. You are making a grave mistake, the Baroness said, her voice dangerously calm as she stepped forward. She was no longer the composed leader she had been earlier. Her eyes were wild with fury. You have no idea what this beast represents, what it is. James could feel the weight of her words, but the beast beside him gave him a surge of confidence. He wasn't sure how or why, but he knew in that moment that the creature was more than he could have ever imagined. It was something ancient, something far beyond what his mind could comprehend. What is it? James asked, his voice steady, though the uncertainty lingered beneath the surface. Why does it matter so much to you? What power does it have? The Baroness's lips curled into a bitter smile, her eyes flashing with a mix of admiration and resentment. You truly have no idea, do you? She said. This creature is the last of an ancient race, the guardians of a long-lost civilization that once ruled the stars. Their technology, their knowledge, it was unmatched. The Baroness paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. James stood in stunned silence, processing the gravity of what she was saying. Guardians? Lost civilization? His mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. This creature, this beast, was far more than just an animal. It was the key to something far larger than he had ever imagined. This beast, the Baroness continued, her voice low and full of dark satisfaction, holds the last remnants of their power, the very secrets of the universe. It has the knowledge of 1,000 worlds within it. And I am going to claim it. James's heart sank as the true scope of the situation began to unfold. This wasn't just about a creature or a pet. It was about control, about power over worlds, civilizations, and perhaps the very fabric of reality itself. The beast wasn't just a guardian of ancient secrets. It was the last remnant of a force that could reshape everything. You can't have it, James said firmly, stepping in front of the creature, his voice rising. I won't let you use it for whatever twisted purpose you have in mind. The Baroness's gaze hardened, her eyes narrowing dangerously. You're too weak, human. You don't understand. The power of this creature is beyond your comprehension. You think you're protecting it, but in reality, you're only standing in its way. And in standing in my way, you've sealed your fate. Before James could react, a sudden noise echoed through the clearing, a soft but unmistakable sound. A voice. Not a human voice, but something older, deeper, and ancient. It was as if the air itself had begun to speak, resonating with the energy that surrounded them. You do not know what you are meddling with. The words were not spoken aloud. They were thoughts, a presence in his mind, so strong and clear that they sent a chill down his spine. James turned his head sharply, looking at the creature. Its eyes glowed with an eerie intensity, its body humming with the same power that had filled the air. The Baroness looked confused for a moment, but then her expression darkened, a shadow of realization crossing her face. So, you have begun to listen, she muttered, almost to herself. You feel it now, don't you, human? The connection, the bond. James felt it too. The connection between him and the creature had deepened, stronger than ever before. He could feel its thoughts, its emotions, an ancient consciousness awakening within him, sharing its knowledge. The weight of its power, its history, and its purpose flooded his mind. This was no mere creature. It was a guardian of unimaginable power, a being that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. And now, it was sharing its burden with him. He staggered back, his mind overwhelmed by the flood of information. The Baroness's words echoed in his ears, but they seemed distant now, irrelevant. The creature was speaking to him, its presence like a voice in the back of his mind. You are bound to me now, human, but the path you walk will not be an easy one. The beast's voice was ancient, filled with the weight of centuries, and its message was clear. James was no longer just a bystander in this game. He was a part of it. Whether he liked it or not, his fate was now tied to the creature's destiny. The Baroness's expression twisted with frustration. No, this cannot be. It was never supposed to be like this. She looked at the beast, her gaze filled with desperation. You were supposed to be mine. All of you. The creature's glow intensified, and James felt a surge of strength rush through him. It was as if he were sharing in its power, its ancient knowledge. We are bound by fate, human, the beast whispered to him again, its voice now not just in his mind but in his soul. And you will decide whether we live or we perish. The Baroness's fury boiled over, and with a sharp motion, she commanded her guards to advance. Enough! She screamed. This ends now! But before the guards could react, the beast let out a deafening roar, a sound that shook the very ground beneath them. The air around them trembled, and for a brief moment, it felt as if the entire forest held its breath. James could feel the power radiating from the creature, a force so overwhelming that it pushed against him, almost forcing him to his knees. The Baroness staggered back, her face pale with fear. The power of the creature, now fully unleashed, was too much for her to control. She was just a mortal woman, no match for the forces the beast commanded. James stood tall, the weight of the creature's power coursing through him. His mind was racing. What had he gotten himself into? He had started this as an innocent bystander, someone who simply wanted to help an injured animal. But now he was part of something far greater than he could have ever imagined. And the Baroness? She was just one obstacle in a much larger battle. He knew in that moment that he couldn't back down. The Baroness was right about one thing. The stakes were higher than he had ever realized. But now, with the creature's power flowing through him, James understood that he had a part to play in this ancient conflict. Whether he liked it or not, the path ahead would be filled with danger but also with purpose. The beast's power surged again, and James felt it, felt the weight of the universe itself pressing down on him. "This is just the beginning," it whispered. "The battle for the future has begun, human, and you are now part of it." The Baroness stepped back, her eyes narrowed in disbelief and fear. "We shall see, human," she spat. "We shall see who survives this." And with that, the storm of fate had begun. The standoff, the clearing, was silent for a moment, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The Baroness's forces stood frozen, their weapons raised, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. The beast's glowing aura filled the air, humming with an energy that seemed to pulse like the beat of a heart. James stood at its side, his body still buzzing with the power it had shared with him. Every nerve in his body was alive, every thought sharpened by the bond they now shared. He was no longer just a human caught in the middle of a battle. He was a part of something much larger, something that could shape the future. The Baroness, still regaining her composure, stepped forward, her face a mask of rage and disbelief. "You think you can control it, human?" she asked, her voice venomous. "You think you can stand against me? Against us?" James didn't flinch. His hand was still on the beast, his fingers lightly brushing its fur. "We are connected now." The creature's voice echoed in his mind, calm and steady. "Together, we are stronger than she can ever imagine." The Baroness's lips curled into a sneer. "You don't understand the power you're dealing with. You're playing with forces that could tear this universe apart. You think this creature is your ally? It is just a tool, and I will use it." The words stung, but James didn't let them show. He could feel the creature's thoughts intertwining with his own, a force of ancient power now flooding through his veins. "She is wrong, human," the beast whispered. "I am not a tool. I am a guardian. And together, we will show her the true meaning of power." With that, James straightened up, his eyes locking onto the Baroness. "You won't control it. Not anymore." The Baroness's expression twisted with fury, but she said nothing. She raised her hand to signal her guards, and in an instant they closed in on James and the beast. The air around them seemed to crackle, with energy, tension rising to a boiling point. James could feel the weight of the situation. This was it. There was no turning back now. As the guards advanced, the beast's form shimmered, its body glowing brighter than ever before. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble in response. James stepped forward, placing himself between the guards and the creature, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let the beast fall into the Baroness's hands. "Stop," James shouted, his voice loud and clear. "You don't have to do this. The creature doesn't belong to you." The Baroness looked at him with cold amusement. "You are in no position to make demands, human. Step aside or you will regret it." But James stood firm. The bond between him and the beast was stronger than ever, and he could feel the creature's power swelling within him. He wasn't just standing against the Baroness, he was standing for the future, for the fate of the galaxy, and for everything the beast had come to represent. Without warning, the beast let out a low growl, and the entire clearing was filled with a wave of energy so intense that it nearly knocked James off his feet. The guards faltered, their eyes wide in fear. The beast's energy was overwhelming, its power so palpable that the air seemed to crackle with it. Even the Baroness took a step back, her face momentarily reflecting uncertainty. "Do you feel that?" James whispered to himself, feeling the surge of power flowing through him. "This is it. The moment when everything changes." But the Baroness wasn't finished. With a flick of her wrist, she commanded her guards to attack. "Destroy it," she ordered, her voice filled with a fierce determination. "Take them both down!" The guards rushed forward, their weapons raised, ready to strike. But before they could make their move, the beast roared, a sound so deafening that the forest itself seemed to recoil. A blast of energy shot out from the creature, knocking the guards off their feet and sending them flying backwards. Trees were uprooted, the ground cracked open, and a shockwave rippled through the air. James barely managed to stay on his feet as the wave of energy surged around him. The creature's power was now fully unleashed, its energy coursing through the very fabric of reality. He could feel the beast's thoughts merging with his own, and for a moment, they were one, united in purpose, in strength, and in resolve. The Baroness stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "No," she whispered, taking a step back. "This isn't possible. This cannot happen." "You were wrong," James said, his voice steady as he turned to face her. "The beast isn't just a tool. It's the key to something far greater, and you'll never control it." The Baroness's face twisted with rage. "You think you've won? This is only the beginning. You've unleashed a power you don't understand, and now you will pay the price." James felt the power within him, the connection with the beast, and he knew she was right about one thing. This was only the beginning. The battle wasn't over. But now, with the creature at his side, he was ready for whatever came next. The guards, now regrouping, began to form a circle around them, their weapons aimed directly at James and the beast. But James wasn't afraid. He could feel the beast's power surging within him, ready to respond to his every thought, every command. "You won't win," James said, his voice low but full of conviction. "Not while I'm standing." The Baroness's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." And with that, the true battle began. The battle for survival. The forest around them seemed to hum with an ancient energy, the trees creaking and groaning as if they too were alive, aware of the immense power that filled the clearing. The Baroness's forces stood, weapons raised, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They knew they were up against something far beyond their understanding. They could feel the pulse of the beast's energy vibrating through the ground beneath their feet, and the air was thick, with an undeniable tension. James, standing shoulder to shoulder with the beast, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had never imagined that a simple decision to help an injured creature could lead to something like this. But there was no turning back now. The bond between him and the beast had solidified, and together, they were more than just a human and a creature. They were a force. The Baroness's eyes were locked onto him, her expression a mix of contempt and something darker. Fear. James could see it in the way her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her weapon, in the way her eyes darted between him and the beast. She wasn't just a power-hungry leader now. She was a desperate woman, willing to do anything to control what she could no longer understand. "You don't know what you're unleashing, human," the Baroness spat, her voice full of venom. "This is bigger than you. This is bigger than the galaxy. You are playing with forces that were never meant to be controlled." James's eyes narrowed as he took a step forward, placing himself even more firmly between the Baroness and the beast. "You're right. It's bigger than me. And it's not yours to control. You'll never have it. Not while I'm here." The Baroness snarled, and with a sharp gesture she ordered her guards to advance. They moved swiftly, their eyes filled with fear but also determination. They weren't going to back down, but neither was James. The beast's energy pulsed again, a low, vibrating hum that filled the air. James could feel the heat of it, the weight of the power surging through him, connecting them, making them stronger than they had ever been. The creature's form seemed to grow even more imposing, its body glowing with an intensity that lit up the entire clearing. "We can take them," James whispered to the beast, his voice low but filled with resolve. "We're stronger together." The creature's thoughts echoed in his mind. "Together, we will change the course of this battle. Trust in me, human." And with that, it happened. In one swift, fluid motion, the beast let out a roar, a deafening sound that shook the very ground beneath them. The blast of energy that followed sent a shockwave through the forest, the trees shaking, the earth cracking as if the world itself was responding to the unleashed power. The guards faltered, their weapons faltering as they were thrown back by the force of the blast. Some were knocked unconscious, others struggled to regain their footing. The air was thick with dust and smoke, and for a moment everything was chaos. But the Baroness, unshaken by the display of power, stepped forward. Her face was pale, but there was a fire in her eyes now. She wasn't going to let this go without a fight. "You may have your moment, human," she hissed, "but it will be your last." She raised her hand, and the remaining guards rushed forward, weapons blazing with energy. But James was ready. With the beast beside him, he felt an unshakable confidence, something he had never experienced before. "Now," he shouted, and the beast responded. It leapt forward with a power that seemed almost too much for the forest to handle. Its massive form crashed through the air, its claws slashing through the guards, sending them flying back. Energy crackled around it, lightning-like tendrils of power shooting out with each strike. James ran with the beast, moving swiftly, almost instinctively, as though he were a part of it. He could feel the surge of power, the connection between them driving him forward, making him stronger. The world around him blurred as he dodged strikes from the remaining guards, using the beast's energy to guide him, to give him strength. He was no longer just a man fighting for survival. He was an extension of the creature's will, a part of its ancient power. The Baroness watched with growing frustration as her guards fell one by one, unable to withstand the fury of the beast. She turned to her second-in-command, a tall, imposing figure who had been silently observing the battle. "We need to stop this, now." He nodded, stepping forward with a weapon unlike any other, an ancient, shimmering blade that seemed to hum with energy. "We have one chance. If we don't stop them now, they will destroy everything." The Baroness's eyes flickered with indecision, but then hardened. "Then let's finish this." With a sharp command, the second-in-command charged forward, his weapon raised high. The blade shimmered with an intense, almost unnatural light, and James felt the air grow heavier as it cut through the space. It was more than just a weapon. It was imbued with ancient energy, a force that could match the beast's power. James saw him coming and pushed himself harder, his muscles aching with the strain of the battle. He needed to get to the second-in-command before the weapon could do any damage. But the man was fast. Too fast. The second-in-command swung his blade down, and James barely managed to dodge. The weapon crackled with energy, its edge glowing brighter than anything James had ever seen. It was only a matter of time before it struck. But the beast was with him. Just as the blade came down, the beast surged forward, its massive body slamming into the second-in-command. The force of the impact sent him flying backwards, his weapon dropping from his hand as he crashed to the ground. The beast's roar filled the air, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the universe itself was holding its breath. "You will not win," James said, his voice steady, filled with the strength he had found within himself. "Not while I'm standing." The Baroness stepped back, her face twisted with rage and fear. "You have no idea what you've unleashed, human," she hissed. "You cannot defeat me. You cannot defeat what is coming." But James wasn't listening. He was focused on the beast, on the bond they now shared, on the power they held together. "We will win," the creature whispered in his mind. "This battle is not just for us. It's for everything." And with that, the final blow was struck. The ultimate decision. The forest had fallen silent again. The chaos of battle was over. the air still vibrating with the lingering echo of the beast's power. The Baroness lay motionless on the ground, her forces scattered and broken, their will shattered. James stood tall, his body aching from the fight, but his heart was burning with a new resolve. The bond between him and the beast had grown stronger, more intense, and he could feel its presence inside him, a constant hum of ancient energy. They had won. But at what cost? The clearing was littered with the remnants of the battle. The fallen guards, the shattered trees, the scorched earth where the beast's energy had torn through the very fabric of the forest. James couldn't help but feel a sense of dread settle over him. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The beast stood at his side, its form massive and imposing, its eyes glowing with an intelligence that seemed to pierce through him. It was still injured, but it was no longer the wounded creature he had first found in the forest. It was something else entirely now, something much more powerful, something far beyond anything James could have ever imagined. "We've won," James whispered, his voice shaking slightly. "But we've only just begun." The creature's thoughts echoed in his mind, calm and reassuring. "The battle is over, human. But the war is far from finished. Our path is not yet clear." He looked around, his eyes settling on the Baroness. She was still alive, though barely. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and her eyes were glazed over, filled with hate and frustration. She had underestimated them, and now she was paying the price. But James knew that this was far from a victory. The Baroness had come here for more than just a pet. She had come for something far more dangerous, and if she hadn't been stopped today, she would have continued her quest for control, for power, for domination. James stepped toward her, the beast moving with him, its body radiating a sense of calm power. He had come to understand that the creature wasn't just a beast. It was a force, a guardian, a keeper of the galaxy's ancient knowledge. And now, that power was his to protect. "You've lost," James said, his voice low and filled with certainty. "This ends here. You won't get another chance." The Baroness's lips curled into a cruel smile, her eyes narrowing as she looked up at him. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning, human. You have no idea what you're up against." "Maybe," James replied, his eyes darkening with the weight of the responsibility now resting on his shoulders. "But I'm not alone anymore." The Baroness's gaze shifted to the beast, a flicker of something, fear perhaps, passing over her face. "You can't control it," she hissed. "It will destroy you all." James took another step forward, standing over her. "I don't need to control it. We're bound together. And that's something you'll never understand." The Baroness let out a weak, bitter laugh, her body trembling with pain and rage. "You think this is about control?" she spat. "This is about the future, about ruling everything that exists. You are nothing but a tool in a much larger game." James's mind raced, the weight of her words sinking in. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the future of the galaxy. And now, he was at the center of it all. "The path you walk will change everything," the beast's voice echoed in his mind. "And the choices you make will shape the universe." James looked down at the Baroness, his eyes filled with a new understanding. She wasn't just a tyrant trying to control power. She was a pawn in something much bigger. And if he was going to survive, if he was going to protect the galaxy and everything he held dear, he would have to make a choice. A choice that would define everything. The beast's thoughts swirled within him, urging him to listen. "This is your moment, human. The decision is yours. What will you do with the power we share?" He felt the weight of the moment. He could kill the Baroness and her threat once and for all. Or he could show mercy. He could choose a different path, a path that might lead to peace, to understanding even though it was filled with uncertainty. He stared down at her, his heart pounding in his chest. Mercy, or judgment? What was the right choice? Suddenly, the clearing was filled with a loud crack like thunder tearing through the sky. The air shimmered with energy, and a deep rumbling shook the earth beneath them. James's eyes widened as the ground split open, revealing an ancient structure beneath the surface. A hidden doorway, long forgotten, had been unlocked by the beast's presence. It was something that had been waiting for centuries, perhaps millennia. The Baroness's eyes widened in shock as she realized what was happening. No, it can't be. James felt the pull of the energy, the weight of the decision becoming even heavier. It is time, the beast whispered, its voice a soft hum in his mind. This is why we have come together. Your choice will determine the fate of everything that follows. The ground continued to rumble as the doorway slowly opened, revealing a glowing light that radiated with an otherworldly energy. It was the power of the ancient civilization the beast had protected, the very source of its strength. But it wasn't just a weapon. It was a force that could change the universe. And it was now in his hands. James looked down at the Baroness, whose face had drained of color, her eyes filled with terror. You wanted power, he said, his voice cold. But now you'll see the consequences of that desire. The Baroness's lips trembled as she struggled to rise, her body weak from the battle. You don't understand, she whispered. It's too late. You can't stop what's coming. This will destroy everything. But James wasn't listening. He stepped forward, his hand reaching for the glowing doorway. We must make a choice. The beast's voice echoed one last time. But remember, human, every decision carries its consequences. He took a deep breath, his fingers brushing against the energy that radiated from the doorway, and as he did, the light flooded the clearing, engulfing them all in its brilliant glow. The Baroness's scream echoed through the forest as the energy surged around her, lifting her off the ground. James stood firm, the beast at his side, feeling the power flow through him. It was a moment of pure clarity, a moment when he understood what he had to do. The light enveloped everything. The clearing, the battle, the fate of the galaxy. And then, it was over. James looked around, the world still and silent. The beast stood by his side, its form glowing faintly in the aftermath of the explosion. The Baroness was gone, her threat extinguished, but the power of the ancient force still lingered in the air. James took a deep breath. We have survived, the beast whispered, its voice calm, knowing. But the future is uncertain. He nodded, understanding. They had won. But their journey was far from over. The universe was vast, and there were other forces at play. But for now, he was ready to face whatever came next. Together.